Good morning and welcome to our Knowledge Transfer Ireland webinar this morning. My name is Siobhan Horn and I work for KTI, and I'm very delighted to introduce our speakers this morning from the Enterprise Ireland Technology Gateway Network. These webinars are set up to shine a spotlight on the wealth of expertise within the Irish research system. So our speakers this morning are going to talk about the practical supports available through the Enterprise Ireland Technology Gateway Network. They are Mark Whelan, Tom Fitzmaurice, Tim Yeomans and Stephen Rooney. And just before I hand over to our first speaker, I'm just going to say a little bit about some general kind of housekeeping topics. So we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So we would encourage you to post any questions that you may have throughout the webinar and we will deal with them at the end. You should see a panel on the right-hand side of your screen so you can post any questions you might have there. And just to say as well that the presentation from this webinar will be circulated to everyone at the end. And also, we know that a lot of people are still working from home. You may be having connection issues like we're all having. So this webinar is also being recorded. So if you have any issues with audio or anything like that, you can get a copy of the webinar at the end. So without any further delay, I'm going to pass over to Mark Whelan, the manager of the Enterprise Ireland Technology Gateway Network.
Good morning, thank you, Siobhan. So as Siobhan said, I'm the manager of the Technology Gateway program. I'm based in our Shannon office. And I'm just going to give you a quick run through, first of all, for about 5 minutes of what the program is, what it's about and how it's structured. And after that, then I'm going to pass over to the three guys who'll take you through, I suppose, the individual gateways, how they're clustered and how they operate, and give you some examples of some of the work they've done with companies. So I'm going to turn my camera off as well now, just so you can see the presentation. So the Technology Gateway program is obviously funded by Enterprise Ireland. It's been around since 2013. And the idea of the program is that it's about increasing the level of interaction between the Institutes of Technology, which includes TU Dublin, and industry in Ireland. So we provide funding to the institutes to pay for, in effect, what our business development people are dedicated resources whose job it is to go out with industry, talk to them, find out what their problems are, bring them back into the institutions so they can be addressed by the research base. The program started, as I said, in 2013. It was funded to 2018, and we're now in the second iteration, which is funded from 2018 to 2022. And that's a €27 million investment from Enterprise Ireland over those 5 years, following 22 million in the first 5. So you can see it's a significant level of investment. And because of that, we have performance metrics which each of the gateways that they have to achieve on a year-on-year basis to maintain the funding that they get. You can see there that the network is spread throughout the whole country. The idea being that it is a network and it operates as a network. So you don't have to know who you need to get to solve your problem. You're free to actually go to any of the individual local gateways, and if they can't help you, they'll make sure they bring you to the person who can. And if necessary, they can maintain their role as your point of contact throughout the program if that suits you better. So you can see there each of the 15 gateways and what their speciality is. So as I said, the idea is that it works as a network. You don't need to know where you're going to. There are 15 local gateways, each with their own speciality and each with their own technical solution. So while there might be slight areas of overlap, which the guys will talk about in the clusters, the idea is that each of the gateways has their own expertise and that you're accessing that expertise. So if you look at the gateways, the 15 of them, there are about 350 research staff behind those 15 gateways available to do work for industry. And that means that they're available on a national basis. And the idea is that what we do is we do close to market projects. So a lot of times we get asked what would the difference between a technology gateway and a technology centre. Well, typically the gateways, we do one-on-one projects close to market, whereas the technology centres are about collaborations where groups of companies come together with shared projects and look at research that's done on a 2 to 5 year basis. So that's, I suppose, the quickest description of a difference. Since 2013, you'll see the gateways have been very successful. We've delivered over 4,400 projects for industry, and that's with about 2,500 companies. So you can see there is a lot of repeat business. There are a lot of companies who come back year on year and do work. with us, and the value of that work that has been delivered is about 39.5 million, just over about half of which was actually cash from industry paying for the work. So the other monies come from, I suppose, the Enterprise Ireland contributions for innovation vouchers and innovation partnerships. So the role of the Technology Gateway staff, as I said, it's about acting as business development managers. So it's their role to go out, talk to industry, find out what problems they have and bring them back in. So I suppose the key point here is that the Gateway staff don't do the research, and the funding that we provide to the Gateways doesn't pay for that research. And I'll talk about how it can be paid for in a moment. So the role of the Gateway staff is really to manage the relationship, to help you source funding, to make sure the work is done. So the main mechanisms we use for interactions and paying for the research are pretty much innovation vouchers, which is a €5,000 voucher you can get, the Enterprise Ireland Innovation Partnership Programme, which again can be up to 80% funded depending on what type of company you are, or you can use the Enterprise Ireland Agile R&D Fund, or the Agile Innovation Fund, and that's where the company applies to do some work, gets it funded, and part of that funding that you can get, you can use with a third party, and those third parties can be the higher education institutions. The fourth way that industry engage is actually probably the most popular. So if you look at those 4,400 projects that have been done, just short of about 3,000 of those have been what we call direct consultancy, or where the company pays 100% of the cost of the work to get it done. So I'm going to pass over now in a moment to Tom, and he's going to talk to you about the Applied IoT cluster. Stephen will now talk about the EMD cluster, and Tim about the food. And the way we have put the 15 together is in trying to bunch them, as I said, into areas of commonality, so that if a company comes in and needs to get some work done, and that work is shared between a number of gateways, there are some natural groupings and natural I suppose synergies that already exist that we've created for the company, so they don't have to worry about what they do or how they do it. So with that, I'll hand over to Tom, and I'll be around again to answer questions at the end.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. As Mark mentioned, I'm Tom Fitzmaurice, Business Development Manager with the Applied IoT Cluster. The Applied IoT Cluster is made up of 5 of the 15 gateways, and geographically they're nicely located from north to south across the country. As Mark mentioned, each one of the gateways in the Applied IoT Cluster has a speciality in some form of Internet of Things technologies, be it sensor technologies, networking communications, software development, and so on. So we have Command and Athlone, IMR, who are based in the IT Tralee, Nimbus in Cork, TSSG in Waterford, and YSR, who are in Letterkenny. I suppose the idea about the cluster is it doesn't matter which gateway you get introduced to or which one is closest to you geographically. Once you make your introduction to the manager and the team there, if they can solve the problem for you, they will. If it requires expertise that they mightn't have on hand, then that's when they can tie in with the other gateways. So again, because it's the Internet of Things, or the Applied Internet of Things cluster, each of these 5 gateways would all have hardware and software personnel on site. They're full-time engineers and researchers, so even though they're based at institutes of technology and technology universities across Ireland, they're full-time research and engineers, so they're working all year round on projects with industry. To give you an outline of how the cluster gateways can work together, a company called Gravesbot had an idea for an automated electric fence system to control cattle feeding. If you look at the diagram on the left, the idea is to have an electric fence going from A to B, B to C, and C back to D, but to somehow automatically control the wire going from wheel X to wheel Y, so that the grazing can be automated and the user can implement or define what amount of grazing that they want, depending on the number of cattle that are in the area. Initially, it was an Enterprise Ireland innovation voucher that the company used with Command and Athlone, who developed the software and the cloud solution so that the user could input data to say how many cattle were going to be feeding, how much of the ground they wanted to use based on the yield that was in the field. And then the hardware side of it was involved robotics, which is where the GrazeBot name, I think, came from, is the robotics on wheel X and wheel Y to control that wire that's going across the field to move automatically without any human interaction and allow for fresh grass to be, made available to the cattle in that field. So again, it was started an innovation voucher, and then the company utilized innovation partnership feasibility study, which again was done with Command. But because of the extensive hardware that was required to, as you see there in the picture on the right, those forks, they rotate, and that's what moves the electric fence automatically based on the information that's provided by the user. So IMAR, who were the Intelligent Mechatronics and RFID Gateway based in IT3, then were brought in by Command to work in partnership as, within two gateways within the cluster to do the hardware solution that then was implemented along with the software. So again, just a kind of an overview of how the gateways within the cluster can work. There's two other clusters that we have within the network, which are END, which is up next. So I'm going to now pass you over to Stephen Rooney, who is with the Design Plus Gateway in Carlow, and he's going to take you through the EMD Ireland presentation.
Hi everybody, my name is Stephen Rooney. I'm from the IT Carlow at Design Plus Gateway in IT Carlow, and I'm here to represent the EMD cluster. So EMD basically stands for Engineering, Materials and Design. The idea is to combine expertise in the gateways in those particular areas. We look at a case study that kind of incorporates that in the next few minutes. Consists of 6 different gateways, kind of spanning the length and breadth of the country as well. So it's good in that aspect. If we go on to the next slide. So if you look at the 6 different gateways that are involved in the cluster, so we've got APT in Athlone, who focus on applied polymer technologies for medical, composites, recycling, etc., things like that. We've got Crest, who are based in TU Dublin, who specialize in coating innovations. They're actually the only dedicated coating lab in Ireland. Design Plus, that's myself, so I'll talk a little bit about us also on that next slide. We've got the MET in Galway, who focus on medical device engineering. We got PEM in Sligo, who are precision engineering. We got the guys down in Seam and Waterford, who are experts in things like material characterizations and failure analysis. So in regards to Design Plus ourselves, in IT Carlow, we basically apply different disciplines to design with the aim to kind of, I suppose, stimulate growth in design and design thinking in the economy. And it helps also kind of reduce financial risks, the funding mechanisms that Mark mentioned earlier. It kind of reduces the financial risk from the client side of things as well. We look at design from the point of view of not just products, but also from areas such as processes, interfaces, materials, communications, all different aspects of design basically. And we tap into the IT Carlow centers of research and enterprise programs. So they have these cores which are different disciplines of expertise that we can tap into to deliver the project. If you look at the little infographic over on the right hand side there, we kind of sit in the middle from the design point of view, and we feed out into the different sectors and servicing the likes of engineering, ICT, communication technology, bioscience, all those aspects. And we can help by allowing the clients to differentiate from competition, help understand the requirements of the users, define the unique selling points, and also do prototype and proof of concepts. If we dig into that a little bit deeper, we take each opportunity and we look at design, design strategy, visuals, product design, and validation. So the validation has really become a critical part of what we do as well, because it gives the client something tangible at the end of each project that they can they can actually put their hands on and see, does it work, or is it worth progressing further in terms of commercial side of things. We apply that kind of design thinking sort of aspects to the different sectors, such as engineering or data science and bioscience. We look at different types of projects. Examples would be sort of material design, electronics design, from the engineering side, from the computing side. We do quite a bit in data science strategy, also user interface, user experience focus for industries that are really heavy on data. Like we have a strong relationship with insurance companies at the moment that are that utilize a lot of data strategy. And we use our bespoke. At the bottom now you'll see an image. You probably can't really see it there, it's a bit small, but it's almost like it's a bespoke design process that we use, which kind of helps us walk through the right process every time we look at one of these projects, to analyze the client's state of play and innovate their capacity to innovate internally in the company, and basically help them make a decision at the end whether it's commercially viable or not. A case study that's worth looking at from our point of view is an innovation partnership. So an innovation partnership, as Mark's mentioned earlier on, is where the kind of higher value type projects where Enterprise Ireland can pay up to 80% of the funding. The client puts in 20%. This particular one was over a 9-month duration. It was an interesting one because it was a lead on from the standard innovation vouchers that happened. So we had 2 vouchers, 2 standard vouchers and 1 co-funded voucher. And then this innovation partnership led on from that. So it was really good from that point of view that it started from nothing and developed all the way through. It was also interesting that it was a collaboration between Design Plus, Kappa and TSSG, which are 2 other gateways. The idea itself was a UV sterilization unit for glass bottles in a bar. So you see the image on the right there. You take your bottle of Heineken in a bar or nightclub and you push it into the unit and it sterilizes it in 2 seconds. Basically, that's the idea behind it. Some key stages in the process from the partnership side is concept development. So we took what was there already from the innovation voucher side and we basically questioned everything and said, right, okay, were we moving in the right direction here? We challenged everything that was there. Re-looked at the aesthetics of the design because it's in the hospitality industry and it needed to look good. So then that developed into prototyping stage. So we looked at the fabrication of the frames, the 3D printing of the actual housing themselves. We have large format 3D printers in IT Carlow that we were able to use from that. And there's also a lot of safety considerations to take into factor here as well, because UV light is harmful. So that had to be considered. Then we basically, during the different stages of user testing, we were able to use iterations of the prototype and develop it further using, modifications to the PCBs, mechanism changes, different materials, and strengthening the robustness of the device itself because it was in a kind of a tough environment. On the collaboration side, then we used Kappa to do the Kappa, who are the gateway in Cork, to help us with the results, basically prove what was it doing, what it said on the tin kind of thing in terms of sanitization. And we also engaged with the TSSC in Waterford to help us develop a really slick comms side of the device itself, like so a nice interface on it. So all in all, just on the innovation partnership case study, it was a really good one from the EMD side, from the EMD cluster, because it incorporated a lot of the different gateways, but it also included, the engineering, the materials, and the design. So all aspects of the cluster itself. Just a few things to kind of be wary of with the partnerships is, making sure that your gateway has the right skill set that you're dealing with. The material sourcing and selection is important, especially on 3D printing and things like that, because what we find is materials in 3D printing are changing all the time. They're, what was the new and best thing in January might be gone by December kind of thing. So it's important to keep on top of those kind of things. Schedule slippages and scope creeps are always issues as well, like, especially on design projects where scope You know, the client might be looking for one thing while the researcher might have a different idea, like, you know, so it can be difficult to keep everybody online on that. So the overall positives on this particular case study were that client got eight working prototypes. They were able to make decisions then on how they would advance this to bulk manufacturing and how they would actually mass produce these units following successful user testing. It's an extremely relevant project considering the current global climate and the pandemic, and it's got them to basically engage with a lot of international breweries and multinational companies. So it's got them sitting in front of, you know, big companies, which is great, and very good feedback from them as well from our side. So we were lucky that it went well, and hopefully we'll be working again with them in the future. So that's the end of my side of it. So I think Tim Yeomans is up next from the food cluster. So I'll hand over to Tim, if that's okay.
So thanks very much, Stephen, for the introduction. So my name is Tim Yeomans and I'm the Centre Manager for Shannon ABC, and I'll talk a little bit about Irish Food Tech. So Irish Food Tech is a cluster of 7 technology gateways in the food and beverage sector, and you'll have been introduced to some of these tech gateways already: APT, Kappa and Design Plus, and some of the previous clusters. And I suppose the reason for that is a lot of the tech gateways have platform technologies that are applicable to a wide range of sectors. And so the other tech gateways involved in Irish Food Tech are MET, based in GMIT, Micra, based in TU Dublin, PMBRC, based in Waterford, and ourselves, which are a collaboration between IT Tralee and Limerick IT. So, sorry, let's go on to the next slide there. So each gateway, as Mark had mentioned previously, has its own area of expertise. So Athlone, predominantly around packaging. Kappa use photonics or light to help food and drink companies with particular challenges. Design Plus, you'll have heard about already. MET and GMIT do a lot of feeding trials in terms of medicinal nutrition. Micra are diagnostics and characterization. PMBRC have a lot of expertise in analytical equipment, and again can help a lot of different food and drink companies. And ourselves then, and I'll talk a little bit about Shannon ABC just in a couple of slides time. So the food processing sector, I suppose, to a large extent, can be divided into this kind of flow diagram. So you've got the input, you've got the process, packaging, the output, and the feedback loop. And I suppose the important thing that I'd like particularly companies to take away from today is that the tech gateways can help you at all stages of this process. And it's not just a matter that you go and talk to MET, for example, around the process, and then you have to go and talk to Design Plus and 2 different projects, and there's no connection between the 2. We all meet on a quarterly basis. As centre managers, we all know each other very well, and we've got a reasonably good idea of what each other does. And so, you know, really emphasizing that network idea. If you come in through one door, you get access to all these different technology gateways that can put together these cohesive projects for you in collaborations that both Tom and Stephen have spoken about previously as well. So I'd say really want to emphasize that at all stages of the food development process, there's a technology gateway that can help you. So Shannon ABC, we're a collaboration between IT Tralee and Limerick IT, and so we'd be the only gateway that's based across 2 colleges. And I suppose our area of expertise is in bioresources, or helping companies get more value from natural products. And so we do this in a number of different ways. We look at a particular byproduct or waste product or raw material and try and identify what else it can be used for. There's a lot of different sectors that the byproduct basically just goes to landfill or animal feed. And there's probably better ways of utilizing that to make sure it's used in a more sustainable manner. And so this first box up here on the left, bioprospecting, is about looking at the raw material or the waste product to determine what else is in there that we can add more value to rather than just sending to landfill. Bioprocessing on the right hand side is the next stage up from that, and really that's just making sure that, you know, it's fine, you've identified what you can use the material for, but can you process it in a commercially scalable way? Because if you can't, you need to look at an alternative way of using it. Analytical and research services really encompass a lot of everything else that we do. We've got some nice analytical kit in Shannon ABC, and we like to put it to work for Irish companies. The final one here, food innovation, is really, I suppose, what I'm here to talk about today. We work with bioresources which are naturally associated with food products. So we've worked with food companies for about 10 years now, helping them across a variety of different areas, from all the way from raw material to final product. So in terms of ingredient screening, bioactivity testing, micro testing, analytical testing, shelf life studies and so on, and particularly some more of these consumer facing services which we deliver with Food at LIT, which are a sister research group in LIT. You know, we can go all the way from start to finish. And so I'll just go through a brief case study of a company that we worked with reasonably recently. So Nutramara are a startup company. They're based in Kerry. They're an innovative nutraceutical and food ingredients company. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to develop a range of products from seaweed. And so they put together a team within Nutramara of people who've got a lot of experience in this area. But I suppose the difficult thing with seaweed is it's a very difficult product to extract from. You need to often use high temperatures, different types of solvents, and to just extract one product from seaweed isn't commercially viable. You need to creating a biorefinery where you extract a range of different products from it, and in that way you can make seaweed processing actually commercially scalable. So they want to look at extracting fucoidan, which is a sugar, and it's been associated with a lot of nutraceutical applications. And this is going to be their first extract that they made it from the seaweed. I suppose their challenge was that they're a startup company. They don't have access to facilities and the equipment necessary to develop that kind of an extract. And so they approached Shannon ABC to see if we could help them with that. And so there's important considerations here in terms of the food sector, that the solvents that you might use to extract from seaweed, like methanol or hexane, which are completely unsuitable for the food sector. And so with the team in Nutramara, we developed a process that was compliant with the food sector, using things like food grade ethanol and water and different temperatures and so on, to try and look at what impact that would have on the fucoidan extraction. And it was a very iterative process that we'd look at different temperatures and time, maybe go back to the company and say, look, we've measured the fucoidan content. This is where we are now. Do we need to do better? How do we change it? And so it was really about access to our facilities and to our people as well, because we worked with seaweed for quite a long time in Shannon ABC. And I suppose one of the important things from this as well is that while the project predominantly was based in IT Tralee, we don't have a spray dryer in IT Tralee. We do in Limerick IT. And so we were able to take the product that we were finished with at the end of the process in IT Tralee and go up to Limerick IT to do the spray drying. And so for the company, that made a big difference because they didn't have to start to engage with anybody else. They were engaging with the same person all the time. And whether it went to one institute or the other, it all happened behind closed doors, and they were able to get the extract as they needed. And so I suppose in terms of the impact for the company, they brought a nutraceutical product to market in just 6 months, which is pretty good. And we continue to work with Nutramara on a range of different projects, including innovation vouchers and an innovation partnership. And again, I suppose the value that they see is in terms of the expertise and the equipment that we bring, but also the network. They know that we're familiar with all the different gateways, and if they need a particular solution solved that we can't do, we know who to go and talk to try and solve that problem. So this is my final slide, and again, really want to emphasize, I suppose, that fact that, you know, the tech gateways can be a one-stop shop in essence for a company, that they come in through one door but can access the expertise of the entire network through coming in that way. So just want to hand you back over to Siobhan now, I think, who will coordinate the rest of the session.
Brilliant, thank you to all our speakers. I'm going to invite everyone to turn their cameras back on, and we're going to go through some of the questions that have been coming in throughout the presentations. And also, if there are any other questions, please do submit them and we can pose them to the speakers now. So one of the first questions that has come through is about the criteria for working with the gateways. Does a company have to be an Enterprise Ireland client? Is there any specific criteria that they have to achieve to work with the gateways?
No is the simple answer. Anybody. We work with anybody, and we're very happy to work with anybody. I mean, we have worked with companies doing New Frontiers, which are just one person at the time, all the way up to the major multinationals. So the only criteria is that you pay for the research, and that's either, as I said, by accessing funding from Enterprise Ireland or by paying for it yourself. Brilliant.
That was another question, was is there a typical size company that works with the gateways? But I think you've answered that.
It's a complete range. I mean, the biggest project we've had has been for 973,000. The smallest projects are, well, we only record projects greater than €1,500 as a metric with the department. So from €1,500 to €1 million.
Brilliant. So the next question I have, it's kind of a technical question. So this is a company looking for a partner to reverse engineer a product and provide feedback on the chemical formulation and possible mechanism of action. So is this the type of project that the gateways would deal with? And also this company is asking, would you recommend using an innovation voucher to cover this type of project?
Yeah, I can take that if that's okay. Yeah, so certainly in terms of mode of action, depending on what they're talking about, it sounds like it's a life sciencey kind of a project. I'm not quite sure without a bit more information, but yeah, in essence, that would fit very well within the Tech Gateway program, and using an innovation voucher would be an ideal way of doing that work. I suppose it really depends on the breadth of work that's required for what they want to do, but what I'd recommend, I suppose, is to contact one of the centre managers, either myself or Tom or Stephen, and we can certainly help them further with it.
I suppose just one point on that, Siobhan, is just to make people aware that vouchers are available to any trading company who is an SME, so 250 people or less.
Great, and we will be circulating the presentation afterwards, so we can also send out your contact details to the companies as well, so that you can have these type of discussions in person in more detail. So my next question as well is, can a company carry out multiple projects with the gateway? Is there a limit on the amount of activity they can carry out?
No.
No. Brilliant.
As many as you want.
Many as you want.
It might be worth throwing in that there's a limit to the vouchers that a single company can get, but there's no limit to the amount of work they can do with the gateway.
Okay. So what we can do as well is we'll circulate information on the innovation vouchers and some of the funding supports that are available to companies. We have this information on the Knowledge Transfer Ireland website, where you can look for different types of R&D support that's available to your company, but it might be useful to look at that in collaboration with the gateway supports. We have another question coming in about Nutramara. Was this the final product for the animal feed market?
No, is the short answer. So what they're producing is intended for human consumption.
Okay.
While you're pausing there, looking at, sorry, Siobhan, one of the things I wanted to say that I'd forgotten to say is that Tim talked a lot about the analytical science and stuff like that. I suppose it's important to note that Enterprise Ireland have also invested €12 million in new capital equipment in the gateways over the last 15 months. So, I mean, over the next 6 months, you'll see lots of new state-of-the-art equipment, and I think that's very important for industry. Not only having expertise there, but also access to the equipment that's best in class too. So, just wanted to make sure people are aware of that.
So I've got a question as well about, do you have any guidance around how to select the best gateway for your project? I know you mentioned that you all work very closely together, but are there any tips for companies that are looking to choose which gateway they need to approach first?
I suppose to a large extent, it's really the question that they want to answer. And while there is overlap between different gateways across different areas of expertise, as Mark had mentioned previously, each one has their own real area that they're experts in. And suppose for the companies, it'd be really to work on what is the question you want to answer that will help you sell your product. And then to talk to the centre manager you think probably best fits that in terms of the centre that does the similar work, and to have a chat with them around that, but to really try and refine what is the question you're trying to answer. And that will help a lot.
You're only seeing 3 of us here now today, like, you know, but there's 15 of us, like, you know, and if you go onto the Technology Gateway website, there's a good summary. It's a good starting point, is just to read the quick summary on each of them. It'll give you a fairly good pointer as to if you're not sure, if you're totally green to it, like, you know, it'd certainly give you a good pointer, or else just talk to any of us here today, we'll point you in the right direction either.
And while all the gateways would want to be trying to, and Mark had mentioned the metrics earlier on, we all have metrics to deliver and projects to complete. All the gateways, I think, would act in a similar kind of a way, that they want the results for the company. And so if a gateway doesn't think it's best placed to do that, it's not going to do the project. It will pass them on to either another gateway or somebody else in the third level sector who can better address the challenge that they need.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of one of the strengths of the network too, is a company can approach their local gateway So the closest one physically to them, they can make contact with them. If the project that they're looking to explore doesn't fall in under their remit, then they'll know the best place to send them.
Brilliant. And on that, we only have the 3 clusters represented, but I've got a question about artificial and robotics. Are there any gateways that are specialized in those technologies?
Yeah, so that would fall under the applied IoT cluster. So again, two of the gateways in particular within the cluster would have a lot of robotics experience. And again, if somebody wants to get in touch with me, I can see what, get more details on the specifics, and we can point in the right direction. So that area would fall under the applied IoT cluster.
Okay, and I have one final question. So how's the process of identifying the right solution for a company? How is that managed within the gateway? Is that a collaborative process between the business development manager and the company?
Yes, I suppose is the short answer. So the business development manager a lot of the time is the jack of all trades. So we know a little bit about everything. And so we bring in the experts within the research centers and tech gateways and the institute to work on the different projects. And so between either the center manager, our business development people, and our scientific experts, we'd work with the company to identify a solution. There's no point in us just coming up with a solution on our own without talking to the company, because what we propose in the absence of talking to the company might be completely inappropriate for them. So it'd be very much a collaborative response to a particular question that they pose, I suppose.
Okay, and I kind of lied when I said the last question, because we actually have quite a few questions coming in. So I'm going to ask another one, and then if there are questions that we don't get answered, what we'll do is we will ask our speakers to give us an answer following the webinar, and we will send that out to you by email after the session. So there's another question about the ownership of intellectual property, if there's any intellectual property created during the work with the gateway. So who owns that intellectual property, and do you have any guidance around that?
Well, that is quite easy. In an innovation voucher, technically the money is coming from the company, so the company owns the intellectual property. In a direct funded project, the company is paying for it, the company owns the intellectual property. If it's an agile R&D, the money is coming from the company owns the intellectual property. The only case in which ownership of intellectual property comes up is if you're utilizing an innovation partnership to fund the project. In most cases, part of the 80% funding is a bonus you get for allowing the institution to own the intellectual property. That is negotiable. Joe Doyle, as Siobhan said, spoke at the last event about intellectual property. He'd be the expert to give you the best advice, but each of the technology transfer offices in the institutes and the universities would explain how the process works. But in effect, what happens is, in a lot of cases, there might not be intellectual property. Where there is intellectual property, you sign a heads of agreement before the innovation partnership that describes the process by which you would value that. So the company knows upfront exactly what it would have to do in terms of payment for it. And most likely it's a license agreement that happens based on net sales. I have yet to see a case where companies have had issues with accessing the intellectual property. There are general formats that KTI have in terms of how it works, and Siobhan, you might talk in a second just about the national guidelines and national protocols. But in effect, what happens is it's in the control of the company as to what they wish to do and how they do it. You can get exclusivity in your market, you can get exclusivity in your territory. So in fairness, from my experience, the advantages are all stacked in the company side in terms of this, because if there is a patent, the company are generally not paying for it until they start selling stuff. And if there's any costs incurred in terms of maintaining those patents, they're maintained by the owners, which are typically the institutions. So Siobhan, would you just like to mention just the national protocols that KTI have?
Yeah, so KTI, we've got a lot of resources available on our website around the ownership of intellectual property from the research system. So we're trying to simplify that whole process. So we've got a document called the National IP Protocol, which is Ireland's national policy for research commercialisation. And it's a really simple guide that sets out in very clear terms about ownership of IP when it comes to any type of research collaboration with an Irish university or Institute of Technology. So if you do have any questions around that, I would advise you to have a look at that guide, and also to contact us at KTI and we can give you further guidance on that. We also have templates available on our website for licensing agreements, for non-disclosure agreements, and they're readily used by institutes of technology and universities throughout Ireland. So it's quite a good way of knowing what type of terms are included in those agreements, and just making sure that everyone is coming from the same starting point.
Just in terms of numbers, Siobhan, 90% of the projects we'd have done in the gateways, the companies would have owned the intellectual property. The other 10% would be the innovation partnerships, but it is a small portion of the work we do.
Okay, and I have quite a few questions coming in about the metrics on the gateways and how is that measured by Enterprise Ireland. So Mark, do you want to say a few words about that?
So obviously at a programme level, we get funding from the department and we have to get approval from our board to spend that money. So when I go to the board before the programme starts, I have to sign up to what I'm going to deliver for the 27 million, and I'm signing up on behalf of, I suppose, the 15 gateways. So the idea is that there are metrics in terms of the number of Enterprise Ireland clients we work with, the amount of industry contribution we get, and the number of projects we do. And they're the three metrics that we report as a programme to the department on a monthly basis. So the contracts that we have with each of the gateways then as Enterprise Ireland are based off those programme level contracts. So depending on the resources and depending on how much money we give each of the gateways, I suppose, they accept responsibility for delivering a certain portion of those targets. So the higher the level of resources the gateways have, the higher level of work and interaction we expect them to do with industry. That fair description, lads?
Yep. And look, and to be fair, in terms of the metrics, I think it's very good when we work with industry that we see there's a reporting structure there, and that there are metrics that we have to deliver, because industry have to deliver on metrics as well. And so there's a driver there for us to get projects finished quickly, because we have a certain metric to deliver in that year. We want to get the project finished appropriately, but also quickly, because we need to deliver on our metrics. So it's a good driver rather than just going off and doing a research project and sure, look, whenever we finish it is fine. You know, so I think from an industry perspective, whenever we've spoken to them and mentioned the fact that we've got metrics to deliver, it normally creates a good impression with the company that, look, that there's a very professional way that we have to act.
Brilliant. So we're kind of coming up to our time. So any questions that you might have, that you might think of this afternoon or the next few days, just send us an email and we can ask our speakers. I am getting questions about the recording and the presentation. So just to reiterate that we will be circulating that after the webinar. We'll also be sending you out a feedback request as well. So we'd really value any feedback that you might have. It helps us to shape any of the future webinars, and it's also really useful for our speakers as well. If you have any specific questions that you want to ask them, you can use your feedback form as a way of doing that. So I'd just like to thank our speakers this morning. There were some really interesting examples of companies that have worked with the gateways to achieve success. So we hope that it's given you all a little bit of food for thought, and that you'll consider working with the Enterprise Ireland Technology Gateway Network for your next research project. Our next KTI webinar is going to be on the 1st of September, and we're going to focus on research collaboration. So we'll have a multinational and an SME, and they're going to be in discussion with us about how they choose their research partners and the different guidance that they would give to companies that are new to working with the research base. And those are a little bit more established as well, about how to set up a long-term meaningful relationship with university or Institute of Technology. So we hope that you'll join us on the 1st of September for that. So that's it from us this morning. Thank you all for your attendance. We really would value your feedback after this. So thank you all. We'll leave it there. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye now.